Here we'll start with finding the slope of both of these lines. Remember, slope is the change in y over the change in x. That's my favorite one, so I'll be using that. But remember, m equals the slope, which is my favorite, which is the change in y over the change in x, or you can think of it as the rise over the run. You could also think of it as the change or the change in y over the change in x, which is y sub 2 minus y sub 1 over x sub 2 minus x sub 1, which is that difference of those. So I myself just like to think of it as the change in y over the change in x. So I'll pick 2 points that are nice crosshairs. I see a crosshairs here, and I see a nice one right here. So when I go from one point to the other, I want to really think about the direction. It's always important, that direction. So as I'm going towards the other point, I'm going my x direction and then also my y direction. Remember, you could go any way. You can go down and then over to it, or you can go up and then over, or cross and up. So there's 4 different ways to come about it, but as long as you keep the direction right, you're always going to have the same answer. So I count 4 units, but I'm going left, so that means it's a negative. So you always have to put a plus or minus for your direction. And then here I go down 2, so that would be a -2 for my change in y. So this one's my change in y because it's going up and down. This one, -4, is my change in x because that's going horizontal. So now I just substitute those in. My change in y is -2. I do feel like putting that -4 up there because it would calculate nicer, but the -2 is my y going up and down. 4 is -4 goes in the denominator, and then I simplify, and I always simplify my negatives, and I always simplify fractions to 1/2. And this is our slope of the line. 1/2 is the slope of our line here. And if I can see that if I kind of go at a smaller jump, that's simpler, +2 and a +1. So that's rise of 1 over the run of 2. We always want to simplify it and leave it as a fraction, because that fraction, this 1, means something. It means the change in y is 1. The change in x is 2. That is slope. Now, when we look at a special case, we still can use that same kind of idea. Slope is the change in y over the change in x. But because it's different, it's going to act differently. So if we're still going to grab 2 points, so I'll just grab that point and this point that are on nice crosshairs on my line. So I'm going to think about what is my change in y and my change in x. So I kind of look and go, hey, I have a change in x here, so that's +3. So I'll put that down here in the denominator. And then I'm going to go up 0. So that I'll put my 0 in the numerator where the change in y is, and I can simplify this. You always simplify your fractions. 0 divided by any number is 0. So our slope of this horizontal line is m equals 0, a 0 slope. Because that change in y going up and down has a 0 in the numerator. So that 0 is in that change in y, it's in the numerator, and that's very important. So if we go to our other special case, I'm going to do the same thing of change in y. Slope is the change in y over the change in x. And again, I'll pick 2 points here and maybe this one here. So we'll grab those 2 points, and I'm going to go down 4. So that's my change in y. So -4 is in the numerator with the change in y. And my horizontal change is 0. So -4 divided by 0 is undefined. We cannot divide by 0. Undefined. So the slope of this vertical line is undefined. We don't leave it as -4 over 0. It is undefined, is the slope. So when it asks for the slope, a vertical line is undefined. And the reason why it's undefined is because the change of 0 is the horizontal 0. There's no change. It's not moving over left and right. It's just changing 0, so that denominator is 0. So to break down kind of the multiple ways that there are the 4 different slopes that are the types of slopes, there's a positive slope. And how you can kind of think of this is if you have a little, what I call the little slope guy, and he's walking up, and he always starts to the left, least to greatest, so the smallest numbers, and he walks and he has to walk up. Here, if he's on a downward slope, he's going to be going down in a negative. So this slope is a negative slope. And I'll label this slopes. Then we have our 0 slopes. And that would be that horizontal. So what would give me a 0 slope would be m equals 0. So that means my 0 has to be in that numerator. So that means my change in y has to be 0, and that would be a horizontal line. So that would be our slope guy walking down, just like walking on a flat floor. There's no up, there's no down, he's just walking flat, which is kind of nice. He's not doing very much. So then we have our other vertical line, and this one is that undefined. So we still have our slope guy, and he is falling. And what does he say when he falls? Undefined.